it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Oh, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. So said the one and only Johnny Cash. So here we are, onto the second part of Doc's Double Dose Wednesday, and we'll move on to Nevada. The mystery of Hermit's Valley, Nebraska. Hermit's Valley is a large expanse of land located in the sandhills of Custer County, Nebraska. It's not a very well-known landmark, as it's a bit of a drive out into the country. The farms thin down into great spiraling hills, as the name suggests, until the road splits off to the left on a trail you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. You follow that until it ends, and the hills take over, and you have to walk the rest of the way. After about a mile of ever-growing hills, it just dips down into a deep crater about 80 feet down. At the bottom is a small expanse of stone, maybe 10 feet high. If you were to talk to some of the older folks in the neighboring towns of Ord, North Loop, or Broken Bow, one of them might be inclined to tell you a story. And the story goes that long ago, back in the pioneer days, a man named John Bainley settled a little cottage out there from the east. Back then the land was supposedly level and quite fertile. He lived here peacefully, farming his fields and tending to his animals. One day the bank in the North Loop was robbed. Nobody saw who it was, as the suspect covered their face with a bandana and made a quick getaway on horseback, shooting and killing the 2 female bank tellers and a man crossing the road in front of him. Authorities chased the thief down and eventually lost him not far from Bainley's farm. Assuming it could be no one else, they apprehended Bainley and put him to hang for murders he hadn't committed. Now this is where it gets interesting. Although nobody knew him other than a strange old hermit, it was claimed he moved here to escape persecution from the east. Persecution for being a witch. It was said they built a gallows right on his own land, and threw the rope around his neck not 5 steps away from his front door. The sheriff himself was said to hear him utter a curse with his final breath before they kicked the bucket from under him, and as he gave out his final kicks, the entire ground within a mile gave way, and everyone was dragged down to their deaths. The money was never found. Since then, it's said his spirits pull down anyone foolish enough to get close, bringing them to their doom. Others say he's still alive and well, due to being a powerful witch with the powers given to him by Satan, and he takes those not wary enough into his now stone house to feast upon their flesh. I heard this story when I was about 7. My mother took me to get my hair cut, where a few old guys would gather there on a weekly basis and swap stories. Well, being close to Halloween, they decided to entice me with a spooky tale, and I was instantly captivated by it. I grew up absolutely loving horror and always wanted to go down to see the ghost or the witch, whatever it may be, but never had the opportunity. My best friend, Jen, loved horror as much as I did. After I told her what I'd heard, we made a promise that we'd go down there when we were old enough to drive. Well, sometime after graduating 10th grade, I was the first to get a license. We hadn't forgotten our promise, and at lunch we finally began planning our excursion. A couple of our other friends, Mike and Tristan, took their normal seats across from us. "Hey, what are you meatheads up to today?" Mike asked, his usual greeting. "Oh, nothing. Just planning on a trip down to the valley," said Jen with a grin. Well, it was obvious neither Mike nor Tristan had any clue what she was referring to. "That sounds pretty lame," Mike said with a chuckle. "I don't know. It could be fun," chimed in Tristan. "What are you going to be doing there?" "Well, did you guys ever hear of Hermit's Valley?" I asked. "Oh, I think I heard something about that. It's supposed to be thousands of dollars down in the bottom, right?" said Mike. "Yeah, and the ghost of the guy who put it down there," I said with a smirk. "What are you guys talking about?" asked Tristan. Tristan had moved to Broken Bow only a few years ago from California. He didn't know much about the history of anything in Nebraska. Okay, so there's this old guy that was supposed to have robbed a bank, and when this other guy, John, got blamed and killed by the townspeople or whatever, he killed everyone and brought the whole place down into a giant hole, because he was actually this witch, Jen told them. Witch? Don't you mean wizard? Mike asked. No, I mean a pair of fucking skis. Look, guys can be witches too, jackass, said Jen, throwing a piece of spaghetti at him. It landed on the side of Mike's mouth, which he slurped up with a smile. And eventually our conversation went elsewhere, but before lunch was up, we'd agreed to be ready the next morning at about 9 o'clock. The next day was Saturday. I packed supplies that I thought we'd need, and naturally my imagination was getting the best of me. Matches, flashlights, water, half a loaf of bread, and a whistle. I called the other three and each confirmed they were packed and ready to explore. Throwing my backpack into the trunk, I made my way to Jen's house. She was waiting for me on the porch, wearing a bright green dress and tennis shoes. A small handbag was slung around her shoulder. Ready for a girl's day out? I shouted. Oh, you know it, Carrie, she called back. Getting into the passenger seat, she noticed the whistle around my neck. What? You're expecting to get Barbara Hershey? Took me a second to understand what she meant. Then I remembered the movie, The Entity, where a woman by the same name was sexually assaulted by a ghost. I just don't want anyone to get lost, and if someone gets hurt, he'll thank me later. We pulled up to Tristan's house in regular fashion. He wasn't anywhere to be seen. That crouton better not have gone back to sleep, said Jen, getting out of the car. I bet he's not, I said as we walked up to the door. We knocked and there was no reply. He lived alone with his mother and I noticed her car wasn't there, which in our understanding meant come on in. So we opened the door. The living room was where he could usually be found and today was no exception. He was snoring away on the couch, half a bag of Cheetos spilling down his messy shirt. Jen tiptoed over and picked one up. As slowly as she could, she shoved it into his open, drool-covered mouth. He didn't budge, and we both laughed quietly as she continued to see how many she could shove in there. She reached about 10 before he snorted and coughed, making Cheetos explode back onto himself. Oh, what the hell? He said as he began to chew the remaining chips. We both laughed hysterically, and I even got a picture on my phone before he wiped the mess from his face onto his arm. Get up, butthole. It's already 9:30 and Mike's still waiting for us, Jen announced. With all the grace of a tranquilized grizzly bear, Tristan rolled off the couch and got up to his feet. Yeah, give me a minute to get dressed, he said, walking up to his room. He came back down a moment later wearing the exact same pants with a different shirt. He carried alongside him a great big duffel bag. What on earth do you need that for? I asked in disbelief. What do you even have in there? Asked Jen with the same stupefied tone I'd had. Well, we're going to a place that has no life for miles around. I just want to be prepared. So I brought a rope with a grappling hook, a couple of pop-up tents, some MREs, and a few other things, he said smugly as he walked out the door. Oh, we're not going to the frickin' Andes, called out Jen behind us. Well, it never hurts to be prepared, Tristan replied, turning back to her. Oh, hey, nice whistle, he said, looking at my chest. It's not... Oh, look, just get in the damn car, I said. Mike lived a little out of town where his parents raised some cattle. We were getting ready to turn when we saw sirens behind us. Seriously? I yelled as I pulled my car to the shoulder of the road. I could already hear and smell the cows from Mike's place. How fast were you going? Jen asked. I don't know, 30 miles an hour? That's not speeding, is it? I mean, there's not even any signs here that say. Eventually, the officer lurched open his door and walked toward me. It was Officer O'Shea, our school's resources officer. He tapped on the window, which I rolled down, and leaning on the hood like he owned the thing, he spoke in between long, loud, incessant chews of his gum. You finally got your license, eh? Well, you ain't gonna have it much longer if you keep speeding like that. License and registration. What? I was only going like 30 miles an hour. I couldn't have been speeding, I replied, handing him my information. Speed limit's 25 here. Not teach you that in driving school? Oh, I hate to do it, but I'ma have to write you a ticket, he said, getting off my car and flipping through his book of tickets. Seriously? For 5 miles over? Oh, fuck. I sighed, shaking my head. Hey, best watch your tone before I give you another ticket for something else, he spat back, ripping off my copy of the ticket and handing my stuff back. Have a nice day. And with that, he walked back to his car. $400? God, what an ass, I yelled, looking at the ridiculous pink piece of paper. Your tax dollars at work, Jen replied. I put the car back into drive and took the turn to Mike's. He was waiting on the porch, except he had no bag of any kind in his possession, just 2 claw hammers hanging dumbly from his belt loops. Hey, meatheads, what's going on? He yelled, running up to the car. Why do you have hammers hanging off your pants? Are you some kind of ninja turtle? I asked. What? No, you idiot. These are for protection. Be it witch, ghost, or hobo, I'll make sure nothing gets us, he said proudly. Jen laughed hard at this. Oh, we'll leave them. The last thing we need is for you to accidentally fix something. Nope, you'll see when we actually need them, Mike said, climbing in the back seat. All right, everybody ready? I asked. Everyone affirmed that they were, and we began the drive out of Broken Bow. The town quickly changed to long green hills as houses became fewer and fewer. Trees were sparse, although they naturally were anyway in Nebraska, aside from one narrow dirt road that led to an abandoned farm. That place always creeped me out. Yeah, the trees were hideously overgrown, with branches that looked like crooked broken talons that wanted to rake in anything that they could get their claws on. Sort of ironic being the home of Arbor Day. There was also a story about that particular place, but that's a tale for another day. We talked to each other about what we would do when we got out there. Mike was all for looking for old John Bainley and bravely taking him out with a hammer. Jen and Tristan were all about finding the bags of money that they were sure would still be there. I, on the other hand, was just happy to be seeing a place with so much history behind it. How many people have actually gone down there over the years? Possibly a handful? Well, there was always a tale about a friend of a friend who went there and ended up missing, but nobody had, to my knowledge, substantiated these stories. Eventually, we reached the turn to the final road. I'd almost missed it due to the overgrowth of tall grass, and I had to put the car into reverse. I parked it along the shoulder, and we all got out, grabbing our belongings. After locking the doors, we made our way down the winding path. The sun was now high in the sky, with not a single cloud in sight. It was already hot out, and shaping up to be a lot hotter. Jen and I were taking measured drinks from our water bottles, and Mike was going back and forth between us, like a dog begging for table scraps. Finally, offering Jen $40, she let him have a sip from hers, and proceeded to smack him when he finished it off. After half an hour of walking later, we saw the hills begin to sharply rise. I wondered if perhaps there was a volcanic eruption of some kind, or a meteor strike that made such a striking difference in the land. The trail wound around into a small canyon of sorts, and stopped around the next bend. In front of us for a good distance was nothing, and on the other side of nothing, more jagged hills. The sun didn't penetrate too far below, however looking down you could make out a stone structure. Luckily, we didn't need the rope and grappling hook, as the sides of the hole were smoothed out enough to carefully make our way down. It took a good while, but we reached the bottom. The ground was surprisingly flat. No grass grew here, and it was all solid stone, which I thought seemed weird, being that most of the dirt around Custer County was more or less sand. We walked around, exploring our immediate area, and found no bones of damned children or ghosts. There was a lot of garbage, however. Tires, bags, furniture, even an old rusted car made their residence here. None of it was very interesting, but we made the best of it anyway. We ran around breaking stuff and making jokes about finding where Tristan's mum had moved to, which was fun for a while, and then we decided to check out the jutting stone in the center. It was a lot bigger than we previously thought. It was towering over us, around 30 feet, was roughly as wide as the base before slimming out as it went up. There were no clear indentations. It had once been a house. Tristan called out from the other side, and we went over to meet him where he'd pointed out an opening against the base and the ground. It wasn't very wide, but before I could think much more about it, Mike was already squeezing his way in. "Send down the rope if I yell," he blurted out before disappearing into the ground. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, calling out his name and seeing if he was okay, when finally his head popped back up into view. "Guys, you gotta check this out," he said before vanishing once again. We decided, since he wasn't dead or trapped, we might as well. Jen went in first, followed by Tristan, and then myself. The tunnel leading down wasn't nearly as suffocating as I'd previously thought, and after a short, backward crawl, my feet met stone ground. Inside, the temperature felt about 40 degrees cooler, and while it was nice now, I eventually began to shiver. Everybody had their flashlight out, and were marveling over the sparkling stone all around. The walls appeared to be made of some sort of pink granite, and it was absolutely brilliant. The area we were in was large enough for us to fan out a few feet. Jen was taking a pocket knife and trying to break off a piece. "Can you stop?" Tristan asked. "Can you suck it?" Jen annoyingly replied. "Look, you're going to bring this entire place down. Then the only ghosts here are going to be us," he hissed back. "Oh, relax. It's been here for hundreds of years. I doubt it's going to hurt it any," she said, finally plucking off a decent-sized stone from the wall. "See, everything's fine, you big baby," she said, showing off her sparkling prize. "Hey guys, looks like it keeps going down from here," I said, pointing to yet another body-sized hole off in the corner. Everyone walked up to investigate. From our flashlights, we could see that it dropped nearly 20 feet or so into more sparkling rock. "Awesome. Wonder how far this cave actually goes down. I gotta check it out," Mike said, grabbing Tristan's bag and pulling out a rope. "Seriously? I think this is far enough," said Tristan. "And we find something awesome and Tristan has to find a problem with it. Go figure," said Jen. "Well, come on, we're how far down already? Does anyone even know we're down here? Did you think to tell anyone?" Tristan replied. Well, we all shook our heads no, but it was obvious our spirit wasn't broken. "I'm just saying, let's not be outright stupid here," he said, shaking his head. "A bit late for that, ain't it?" Mike piped up as he handed one end of the rope to me. "Well, what if he's right, you guys?" I chimed in, tying the rope around my waist. "And if this thing does decide to come down, nobody's going to come looking for us." "Well, should have thought about that before taking the rope," Mike said with a smile as he began his descent. After a minute or so, he reached the bottom, and his gaze was fixated on something. "Oh my God, you guys, you gotta see this," he yelled up. Tristan decided to stay behind and keep an eye on the rope. The rest of us climbed down into the cramped hole, where it was absolutely freezing. My breath was noticeable as I tried to keep the stone off my skin, where the cold burned each time it made contact. The thought had never even occurred to me to bring a hoodie. The small pink cavern opened into a wide room. The pink sparkling stone was completely smooth around us, forming one big glassy-looking sheet. In the center of this room was a large, semi-transparent gemstone, roughly the size of a truck. "Oh my God, you guys, we're rich!" Jen yelled as she ran up to run her hands across it. She immediately took one of Mike's hammers and began trying to chip off a chunk. "Dude, I can't believe this has been here this entire time and nobody's found it," Mike exclaimed happily. Of course, I was transfixed as well. This supported my meteor theory, and while I was mostly lost in thoughts of fame over such a discovery, looking at it made my gut tighten. Hey guys, I think we should... But I didn't get to finish. The piece Jen was breaking off cracked loudly and swiftly, breaking the stone nearly in half as one side almost toppled onto Mike. Jesus Christ, he said, narrowly getting out of the way. You get a big enough piece? He yelled at Jen. Sorry, but I did, and there's one for all of us, she said, eyeing some of the many pieces that broke off in the middle. Right on, Mike said as he picked a fist-sized chunk up. Aren't you going to take one? She asked me. Oh, I think I'm all set. Why are they completely round? I said, eyeing them with wonder. Must be separate ones that formed in the middle, she replied, seeming satisfied with the answer. Mike was already stuffing others in his pockets. Well, we've seen there's no ghost or witch. We should go back now. It's frickin' freezing down here, I said, moving towards the exit. Everyone else agreed and we returned to the rope. Hey, dumbwaiter, we're ready, Mike yelled up. Tristan held tight as Mike scrambled his way up. I was just grabbing the rope as I heard Mike shuffle against the wall. I looked up just in time to see his foot come down and make contact with my face. Everything went black, and my vision exploded into stars as my body hit the ground. Oh shit, are you okay? Mike asked. I groaned and sat up, feeling the blood drip down my nose. I put my fingers to it and could feel it was bent out of shape. What the hell was that for? I mumbled out as he and Jen helped me back to my feet. Sorry, man. The rope slipped out of my hands. It's so cold down here I had, no traction. I'm pretty sure you broke my nose. Yeah, about that. Look, this is going to hurt for a second. Before I could ask what he meant, there was another sharp crack of pain as he bent my nose back into place. Yeah, much better. You can thank me later, he said, patting my head, and once again began climbing the rope. I waited for him to get to the top before grabbing it once again. The bleeding eventually stopped, and I began pulling myself up, the blood seeming to give my cold hands traction. For your troubles, my good man, I could hear Mike saying as he flipped a small round stone to Tristan. Oh, awesome, he replied, putting it in his shirt pocket. I climbed up next, and Jen followed. We all made our way to the final entrance, where the warm sun once again greeted us. That was awesome, guys, Mike exclaimed, taking out one of his yellow round stones and looking it over. Yeah, except for the part where you kicked in my face, you asshole, I mumbled. Hey, what's that around your neck? Is that the come back and kick me whistle? He replied smartly. Mike held up his stone to the sun, where it shone brilliantly. There wasn't much to it aside from a shady blob in the center. Oh man, we're going to make a fortune from this place, Tristan yelled. No kidding. We're totally coming back sometime, Jen said with a big grin. We walked back to the car, the hot sun already making us forget about how incredibly cold it was down there. Everyone was panting and covered with sweat when we made it back. We got to town and I dropped Mike and Tristan back at their homes, making sure to go under the speed limit this time so Officer O'Shea couldn't say anything. We got back to Jen's house and hung out for a bit, looking at the stone she'd taken from the valley. What kind of gem do you think it is? She asked. Not really sure. I think amber's the only stone that color I know of. You mean the sap stuff? Oh, that'd be great. I don't think it's as pricey as a diamond, but there are a ton of them down there. We'll still make a pretty penny, she said, passing it off to me. I was shocked by just how cold it still felt. Yeah, probably. It's just strange, though, I said, eyeing the center of it through the sun. What? That you don't want to make money from any of this? Yeah, that is pretty strange, she said, grabbing it back from me. No, it's just that if this is in fact from a meteorite, I wouldn't think amber would be the thing to find. It should be some kind of metal or something. Jen's father, Sam, then came to the door. "Hey guys, supper's ready. You staying over to eat, Daniel?" he asked. "Nah, I gotta get going." "I appreciate it anyway, Sam," I said, getting up and walking over to my car. The sun was beginning to set now, and it cast an eerie blood-red shade across everything from its place behind their house. "All right, well, have a good one," he called back. "Yeah, come by tomorrow and we'll do something," called Jen. I squinted back at them, raising my hand in both a goodbye and agreement with them, and drove back to my home. Later that night, Mike never heard the cracking sound that came from the table across his room. Neither did he feel the slimy sensation crawling across his skin, and he especially didn't feel the stinging sensation when something bit into it and pulled its way through into his body. He slept quite peacefully, never once even tossing or turning. The next morning, however, he awoke feeling sore, and every muscle in his body ached something fierce. "Oh, must be coming down with the flu," he thought as he struggled to get up and went to use the bathroom. He flicked the light on and went over to the toilet. Nothing happened. Well, he knew he had to go, quite badly in fact, but nothing would come out. Mike pushed with all of his might, and finally a small splash hit the toilet, followed by a large, dark worm. He screamed as he grabbed onto it and desperately pulled. With a rip, the thing came out and he threw it down into the water, flushing the toilet. He looked over his body and saw multiple holes throughout his arms, legs, and chest. "Mom! Dad!" he screamed. Nobody came, and he remembered they were going to a gun show for the weekend. He cried as he ran to a drawer in his kitchen and grabbed a carpet knife. Blood flowed freely in dark rivers as he opened his skin and around the holes. Here and there he was lucky and was able to grab hold of a worm and rip it out. He ran out the back door and took a tumble down the stairs. Everything began to go black, and he could feel the creatures eating him from the inside out. Sharp little teeth fervently crunched down on his muscles and organs. What worms did escape slowly made their way to the barbed wire fence where the cows were noisily grazing without a care in the world. The next day I went over to Jen's to hang out. Sam greeted me at the door. "Hey there, how are you?" he said with a smile. "Oh, I'm fine, thank you. Is Jen around?" "Yeah, I think she's still asleep. It's almost noon. Come on in and beat on her doll," he said with a chuckle. I walked up the stairs to her room. The door was shut, and I listened, but I didn't hear anything, so I lightly tapped. "Jen," I called out. "Hey?" She sounded like she'd been crying. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. Something weird's happening." Her voice was shaky. "What is it? Are you hurt?" The door slowly creaked open, and she was indeed crying. I slowly made my way to her. "What is it?" I asked, looking her over. "I need you to look at something for me." She turned around and parted the hair on the back of her scalp, and I could see a small bloody hole. "What the hell is that?" I asked, leaning in. "I don't know. When I got up this morning I saw blood on my pillow, and I swear I felt something move when I touched it," she said in a hushed whimper. I took a closer look, moving my fingers around the edge of the hole, when, for a flash of a second, something dark came into view and then disappeared again. "What the hell?" I almost shouted. Moving away from her, she began crying again. "Get me some tweezers and a flashlight. We've got to get whatever that is out," I said, and she made her way to her connecting bathroom. She returned with them a moment later and handed me a small flashlight from her desk. I made her sit in the chair with her head against the top, and I slowly poked around the hole again, tweezers ready, and then I saw it. I grabbed a hold of the thing and pulled. Jen was obviously in pain as I slowly pulled a worm out of her head. It seemed to go on forever, as more and more of its slimy body came out until finally it pulled tight. I let go to get a better grip, and like a bat out of hell, it began to slither its way back in. Luckily, I was quick enough to grab its body about a quarter of the way back in, and I pulled again. Once it was tight, I ripped that sucker out, and I finally held a writhing thing roughly 1.5 feet long in front of my face. I panicked and looked for anything to throw it in and decided on the trash can. Tweezers and all made their way in. I slammed the lid shut. "What the hell is that thing?" Jen screamed. Before I could reply, I ran to her toilet and threw up my breakfast. I've never liked the idea of parasites, and that was way too much for me. After a few minutes of gaining my composure, I went to see how she was doing. Sitting on a bed, she still sobbed. "We got it right. There's no more in my head," she asked as I sat next to her. I nodded, and she leaned towards her garbage can and slowly opened the lid. The thing was still moving around in there, trying to find a way out of the metal can, and she reached in real quick to grab the tweezers. Once again, she grabbed the creature and held it up in front of us. It was massive and moved limply back and forth. The body was black and segmented, which led to a mouth of sorts that opened wide with 4 large teeth in a square pattern and more inside. "I've never heard of anything like this. I don't know where I would have gotten it," she said, much calmer now. "The only place you could have gotten it was at Hermit's Valley." Saying this out loud caused me to shoot my hand to the back of my own neck. There was no hole, thank God, although every itch I had or muscle spasm that went off, my frightened brain chalked it up to being a worm. "Do you remember at any point feeling pain there?" I asked as she pulled a lighter out of her drawer and held the flame to the struggling creature. "No, there wasn't even any blood until this morning. I don't know how it got in me." The worm finally stopped moving and lay limply in her clutches. She put it back in the trash can and we stood up. "Oh, you should clean that up. Have you got any alcohol?" I asked. "Yeah, just a second," she said, going back into the bathroom. While she rummaged around, I took a look at her room. The bedding was messy, blankets and sheets thrown on the opposite side of the floor. A decent pool of blood stained her pillowcase, and on her other nightstand were her stones. The pink one lay shining in the morning sun, coming through the windows, and the yellow one was crumbled to pieces with a puddle of water that dripped off the side. All at once, it clicked in my head. "Jen!" I screamed to her. She came running back out with a concerned look on her face, and I pointed to the yellow rubble. The recognition on her face was instant. "The worm must have been from that stone," she practically screamed, running over to it. She grabbed every fragment she could and threw it into the trash. "We have to tell Mike and Tristan," she said, and began grabbing clothes from out of her dresser. "Hold on, I want to get your head fixed up first." She reluctantly came back over and crouched down. I applied the alcohol, which made her wince, and then put the bandage on as best I could around her hair. "You finished there, Dr. Quinn," she said, standing back up. "Yeah, but maybe we should hit the hospital too." "We can do that after we check on them," she replied, going to the bathroom to change. I was able to get a hold of Tristan on the first ring. "Hey, what are you up to?" "Tristan, you okay? Did you find any holes in your body?" "What the hell are you talking about? Is this some kind of stupid joke about my mom?" "No. Those stones we got from the valley yesterday have some kind of worms in them. I just had to pull one out of Jen." "Worms? I don't have any clue what you're talking about." "Where's your stone?" "I think it's still in my pocket. Let me check. Hang on." A few minutes went by and finally he came back. "Yeah, it's right here. I don't know what's going on, but it's really not funny." "We're going to come over. Put that stone in a bucket or something." "Whatever, I'll see you in a bit." He hung up and Jenny and I got into my car. On the way over, Jen kept trying to call Mike, but was met with no answer. "Do you think he's okay?" she asked, on the verge of tears again. "I don't know. He brought back a lot of them. Tristan's hasn't broken up yet, so maybe it's some kind of egg." "Oh God, that's so gross. I can't believe that thing was inside me," she said with a shudder. We made it to Tristan's house, where he was seated in the living room. "Hey, what the hell's going on now?" he asked, holding the stone. I grabbed a mostly empty McDonald's cup on the table next to him and slapped it in. "Hey, what's your problem?" "Dude, listen to me. These stones have some kind of worm in the middle. I don't know how it all works, but Jen's broke open in the middle of the night and crawled its way into the back of her skull." "Yeah, bullshit. You're just jealous because you didn't get one," he said, pointing an accusatory finger in my face, which I slapped away. "Look, damn it," I said, turning Jen around, pulling the bandage off, exposing the wound. "Yeah, right, a worm did that. I'm sure she just smacked it against the cave sometime yesterday. I don't know what you guys are trying to do, but it's getting old," he said, taking his cup back and taking a last big sip of the remaining Coke. "Oh, you idiot," I yelled, ripping the cup back out of his hands. I looked inside, and my stomach dropped. The stone was in pieces, and there was nothing else inside. "Yeah, all right, you guys are getting on my nerves. Get out," he said, waving us off. Well, we continued to try and reason with him, telling him he needed to go to the hospital, but finally his mother came from around the corner. "You said to leave. You two need to leave now," she said, opening the door. I growled in frustration, then Jen and I left. "What are we going to do?" "I'm not sure. Maybe it can't survive in the stomach. Either way, there's nothing we can do for now. We need to go check on Mike," I said, getting back into the car. The drive over was quiet. We made our way to the edge of town, where we could hear the loud, frequent baying of cows. I wanted to slam down the accelerator, but I remembered the whole situation yesterday with Officer O'Shea. He'd be more than happy to pull me over again, and it was a good thing I didn't, because he was sat in the same place by the concrete yard, stuffing his face with the burger. We finally reached his place, and I saw his parents were gone. Jen and I got out and ran to the door, throwing it open. "Mike," I called out. The living room was empty and dark. "Mike," I called out again, and was greeted only by silence. I knew his bedroom was just under the stairs, so I slowly walked in towards it. The door was open, and I looked inside. I flipped on the lights and was in shock. Blood was all over his sheets, and broken yellow stones littered his floor with water soaking into the carpet. I heard a shriek come from the kitchen. I ran out and down the hall, seeing what had made Jen scream. A large amount of blood trailed from the kitchen, leading to the back door. Just outside was Mike's crumpled body. What was left of his slashed face was bloated and purple. Deep gashes ran along his limbs and chest, and flaps of skin were pulled down to reveal muscle and bone. His discolored skin moved in smooth waves, contorting in sickly contractions. If I'd had anything left in my stomach, it would have all been gone in that moment. Pulled out my phone to call the police, when I noticed dark heads poking out of poor Mike's body, and they were making their way toward us. There seemed to be no end to them as they came out in foot-long lengths. I looked around and grabbed a shovel that was leaning against the porch and started chopping them in half, then in quarters, until eventually there wasn't anything left. I yelled at Jen to call the police as I continued to kill as many of them as were coming towards us. Eventually I didn't see any more, and a cruiser came rolling up. O'Shea got out of the car, drawing his gun and pointing it at us. "Don't move," he yelled, slowly moving his way towards us. "Drop the shovel and put your hands on your heads." Jen began to protest, but the officer stopped her. "I don't know what happened here, but you can explain it down to the station. Till then, I don't want to hear a peep. Do you understand?" he said, looking to both of us. "Yes, sir," Jen affirmed, and I gave a nod. He handcuffed us one at a time and put us into the cruiser after reading us our rights. We've been down here now the rest of the day. I haven't seen or spoken to Jen since we left the booking station. They continue to question me over and over again, asking me why I killed him, why I hated him so much, why I keep making up stories about worms. Nothing I tell them makes any difference. All I can do is wait in my cell until I make bail. If I make bail. I can't sleep. The thought of Tristan drinking that Coke is weighing heavily on my mind. So, how did you like this format? 2 videos in one evening? Well, a lot of you like when I do the longer videos, and, well, the shorter ones just don't seem to attract as many viewers. But, well, I thought, why not try giving you 2 in one evening? You can enjoy both of them, if you feel like it. Or just take one at a time, because, nevertheless, some of you do still like the shorter stories. I say shorter, but both of these were 40 minutes long, weren't they, anyway? So, well, let me know what you think in the comment section below either of these stories this evening. I enjoyed both of them, I really did, so let me know what you think. Well, that is enough for one evening, isn't it? I hope so. So until the next time, which will be very soon, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or 2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.